Aloha, namaste, it's Alexis with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to bring an update on our planetary shifts we've had over the last few days. We had Mercury move from sidereal Aries into Taurus on the 30th of April, and we also now have Venus here in her own sign as of today, the 4th of May. We have the North Node Rahu already here in this place in Taurus. And the main thing with Taurus that is really important to understand is that it's where we're taking care of our physical needs, our security, our material needs, but we're doing it in a way that feels good. So it's not just about this survival quality of Capricorn, which is another earth sign, or this desire to sort of make everything perfect and the mental realm that gets brought into the physical realm in Virgo. It's really where we're emphasizing daily life and doing it in a way that is not so harsh. So it's really about beautification of daily life, beautification of the way we care for our bodies, the food we eat, where we get the food we eat from, meaning literally the earth that it grows in, but also how we prepare it and cook it and share it with friends. It's about this quality of cleaning our bodies in a way that feels good. Perhaps you take a bath, maybe you take a shower. How nice is the home you live in? How comfortable is it for you? Does it make you feel good? This is a lot of what the focus is in Taurus, is how can we feel good? How can we feel in harmony with our environment and also with the other people around us? Because Venus is really about harmonizing our relationships. So both Venus and Mercury are these relational planets, right? They're these planets that involve us and others. With Mercury, we're communicating, we're using our words, we're taking in their information, we're giving them information. We're engaging in the world. With Venus, it's really about relationships. It's about the love we give, the love we receive, that conditional quality of love where we want to give and take, and we don't just give and give and give and expect nothing in return. We do indeed expect something in return with Venus. It's where we really want to beautify and harmonize our lives, and ideally with other people. Ideally with other beings there. It can be romantic relationships, it can be partnerships through business or friendships, but it's where adults interact in a way that feels good, nice, as though there's compromise and everyone's needs are being met. And beyond even our needs being met, it's again that thing that I was just talking about with Taurus, where we want our needs to be met in a way that feels good. We don't want it to just be the basic need, like you have survival, okay, I have a roof over my head and I'm eating today, so life is okay. We want to up level that to a place where we're, our focus is on making it very pleasurable to be in relationship with one another, where we're not just not fighting, we actually are loving each other and in that place of deep respect and harmony, which we can see in the world today is a little bit challenged, right? We've had so much fuel for the relational fire. And because people have been so separated over the last year and have mostly relied on the internet and these devices in order to connect with people, there's a lack of empathy. There's a lack of capacity to actually communicate. When everything's through this screen, then the humanity gets lost. And I see this because I, live somewhere where people come to visit, right? I live in Hawaii and there's a lot of tourists. There's a lot of people who are who've just spent a year maybe locked up and are now trying to take vacations. And they come to all the places that we go regularly. And sometimes I talk to them. And we have conversations about things that really get heated online quick. Very, very quick, because the typing, the written word that we're able to do in these sort of shorthand writing, it's not like we're writing letters online, we're writing quick pieces, and, something ticks us off, or there's a confirmation bias, or there's some kind of, trigger that comes up, and we might lash out really quickly online in this sort of anonymous way where we're not facing somebody. But when we're actually talking face to face with someone, even if we have really different views on a subject, there's a humanity that takes place because there's another human in front of you, and you can see their humanness. You can see their flesh, you can see their hair, you can see the, the places where they are vulnerable in their appearance, if they're handicapped, or if they're older, if they're overweight, or whatever might be something that's a vulnerability for them. You can see, and they can see you in that same vulnerability. And there's a love that takes place when people are in front of each other. There's a basic human care that takes place when people are in front of each other. The types of fights we see in person usually take place between two groups of people that have vehemently different views and have like learned to hate each other, or from people who are extremely disturbed, who have such an isolated mindset of their own that they don't ever feel connected to people when they see them, or to people who love each other a lot and or know each other really well and are fighting like partners, maybe a husband and wife or something like that, where there's so much heat from knowing each other so well that it's different. It's like personal. But when we see people we don't really know very well, that we aren't related to in any way, and we don't really have any reason to dislike or like, more often than not, we can find some humanity in that, whether we're going into a grocery store or if we're on vacation somewhere and we're talking to local people. Hopefully you do that with respect. And especially if you come to Hawaii, you do that with aloha, and you don't, travel places and sort of act like you own the place. But most people don't. I mean, that's the truth, is most people really don't come into places in that way. They might do it unconsciously. They might have certain behaviors that are giving that impression off to people. But if they were gently told to, that was the reflection that people were getting from them, they would probably adjust their behavior a little bit. Most people want to get along. Most people want to be accepted. It's actually the most fundamental human thing we have, which is why we call someone like sociopathic if they don't want to be accepted, or if they feel like hurting and injuring people in society. It's usually something quite psychologically wrong. So unless there's a group think that is contributing to that and encouraging that, as we see in certain kinds of warfare and in these different groups and sects that really get people to feel such anger about others that they're willing to hurt, harm, kill, whatever, another human, then the truth is, human to human, most people want to feel accepted, and they want to accept others. They want to get along, and they're not actually looking to have these really isolating experiences where it's us and them and really separating ourselves. So the only way that usually works is if there's a group that you get to be a part of still, so there's a them, but there's an us, and the us is what's super important to the people that choose that dynamic and that polarity. And more people are choosing it online. But my point is that in person, people are not as likely to choose that. They're more likely to cross bridges and more likely to say, oh, I see why you feel that way, and this is why I feel this way. And, really sort of bring up the differences of where we might even be coming from, the environments we might be living in, the reality we might be living in, and how that can make it different for each of us, what our experience is. So this move from fire to earth is not only a stabilizing move in our relationship, an opportunity for us to stabilize and ground and root through our relationships, but it's also an opportunity for us to get along, to move out of the fiery, more selfish placement of Aries, where things are, this is what I'm trying to do, and I'm doing it with blinders, and I don't really care who I affect or how I trample on someone, to that placement of, oh, okay, I have these needs and I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to take care of my body. I'm going to do the things I need to do. But I'm also going to be aware that there's other people there, and I'll invite them in to also share my food or share my reality in a way where they can also feel comfortable. And if they don't want to, that's also okay with me. I'm not really, in Taurus, we aren't really leaders or followers. We're not really looking to have anyone tell us what to do. There's probably nothing worse you can do with a Taurus than tell them what to do. But they're also not really looking to lead anyone else. They're not looking to tell anyone else what to do either. It's a very individual sign in that way, where it's just about hey, there's grass and I want to eat it, and I'm going to keep doing my thing that feels good. And if you're not bothering me, then I'm happy with you being here also. But not a lot of, not a lot of conflict. And the conflict that does come up is usually kind of intense because it's a deep transgression on the personal space and safety and comfort and peace that Taurus is trying to establish. So generally speaking, if you're in, with these relational planets, Venus and Mercury being there, if there is going to be conflict, it's going to be because there's a pretty strong transgression happening that's going to create that. Otherwise, it's kind of a peace-loving sign. So we have, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can see what we're actually looking at here, which is today's the 4th, as I said. So we have Venus just moved in and Mercury's been in for a few days. And the Rahu, the North Node, is here, where we have a lot of dispersion of energy, a magnification of energy, and an obsessive quality. Now, Rahu is exalted in Taurus because those grounded qualities I just spoke about really help to stabilize the airy nature of Rahu. There's a voracious appetite where Rahu is. It's literally a head and an open mouth without a body. So no digestion of experience, just the taking in of more and more experiences. And so this quality of Rahu is earthed or grounded in Taurus. And we have more of a capacity to slow down the process and not have it be quite as erratic or frenetic as Rahu can be. Especially in maybe a fire or an air sign, that dispersion is dispersing what's already airy or what's already fiery and jumping, right? But in earth, it's so grounded and so rooted that the dispersive quality is also taken down a couple notches. That being said, whatever Rahu joins, whatever the nodes join, and K2 down here in Scorpio is not to be ignored, and I'll talk about it in a second. But whatever the nodes are joined is a very, it's going to enhance the quality of that planet. It's going to, and enhance is a word that actually has a lot of positive connotations. It doesn't necessarily make it better. It makes it more. So Rahu right now is at, we can see it's 16 degrees here. Mercury will reach it faster than Venus. So the quality right now that would really become magnified, maybe that's a better word than enhanced, is this sort of expansion and magnification of the energy that can make it seem really big, right? It's a delusional quality of like, wow, look how big that is. Look how much that is. Wherever Rahu is in your chart natally is a place you really fixate on as being something that you want, something that you're really obsessed over. And it's also a place where you have a lot of immaturity. You don't have a lot of experience. You don't have a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and you're not calling upon the wisdom or knowledge of others. You're like, I know this of myself. I'm going to learn my own hard way. I'm not going to take the advice from my elders. I'm not going to take the advice from my parents. I'm not going to take the advice from my friends who obviously know better than me. I'm going to keep learning this lesson myself again and again and again until I get it right. So it's that trial and error quality, and very youthful, very young, that infantile, really, a part of us that wants to learn our mistakes on our own, that wants to actually fall and get up again and again and again ourselves and not listen to others. That's really what Rahu is. So when Rahu is going to be joined Mercury here, we're going to see the qualities of Mercury, the speech, the communication, the taking in of information, the discernment of information. We're going to see that expand and become a little bit more delusional. Mercury is in very positive dignity in Taurus. It's a wonderful place for Mercury because it's grounded. So there's that quality of stabilized communication, not just flying all over the place to get information, but a grounded quality. And there's also a harmonizing quality because Taurus is Venus's sign. We have a capacity and a desire to get along. We really want to make the information connect. If we all had Mercury and Taurus all the time, we would get along because the idea wouldn't be to beat somebody like with, Mercury and Aries, like it's a competition or something of information. The idea wouldn't be about just taking in information all the time, as Mercury is in its own signs. it would be about creating connection through communication, which is very harmonizing. That's, there's an agenda at play. So it's not in its exalted state as it would be in Virgo, where there's a lack of agenda and it's more objective, but that can feel quite robotic to people who don't have a Virgo Mercury or Gemini Mercury, maybe, where it's kind of this information processing. To most of us, because you have to understand that these are the two planets where Mercury rules, or the two signs that Mercury rules, all the other placements have something else going on, pretty much an agenda of a sorts. We see maybe a little bit less when Mercury's in Saturn signs, but in Venus's signs, the agenda is to get along. In the water signs, there's a very emotional agenda to connect. And if we don't connect, we feel really sad and maybe even a little bit controlling or passive aggressive. With the fire signs, it's sort of to dominate and to, assert something. And it can definitely be very strenuous on communication when one side has an agenda that's either different from the agenda of the other side, or the other side doesn't necessarily. So, sorry, a little interruption here. But the quality of Rahu expanding that Mercury is one where we're taking the agenda of Mercury being in Venus's sign of Taurus, wanting to really get along, wanting to really use our words and our communication to connect rather than disconnect, because when Mercury is in Aries, there's a lot of disconnect. We are expanding that agenda also. So we're expanding the part where we are wanting to get along and potentially really kind of feeling delusion around that, like what it means to get along and what it means to have communication that is harmonizing. Does it mean to communicate honestly and truthfully and share those reflections with one another? Or does it mean to withhold information that we think will upset someone? Because it's a very different thing. The fact of the matter is Mars is still in Gemini. So our capacity to take in information objectively is hindered by this. We are feeling a fire and a passion about information and about what we're reading or accessing informationally. And the exchange of signs that was happening, where Mercury was in Aries and Mars's sign, and Mars is in Gemini and Mercury's sign, was giving a lot of intelligence to both of these. It was offering discernment on the part of Mars about what to fight about, what battles were worth taking on intellectually in the realm of the intellect. And it was offering some discipline and courage with Mercury, where we would maybe not say every single thing that needs to be said or that we want to say, really, in a way, shortening our words to distilling them to the most simple statement that gets our point across. So that intelligence is now lost for Mars, right? The part where Mars was getting the boost from Mercury, that got lost when Mercury changed into Taurus. Now, Mercury went into a higher dignity overall without the boost of the exchange of signs. Mercury's just in better dignity in Taurus. There's that grounded quality of taking in information on a slow, methodical process so that it's not just bum rushed into our brain and then also spit out in the same way. There's a slower quality to it where we're more able to just kind of plod along and gather the information and then maybe pass it out. But it comes from a bit more of a grounded and slow place. But it also has that agenda. It has that agenda of getting along. And the Rahu part could really magnify where we feel like what we say may upset someone, or where we feel like the information we're taking in is going to separate us from someone. And we don't want that. We don't want that to happen. So as a result, we either don't speak or don't share our truth. And we also maybe don't open our ears to other people's, because we kind of don't want to know. We just want to get along. So it's important to sort of understand the distinctions of why we feel the way we do, or why we communicate the way we do, and how it's different, how the fire and charge from our communication is sort of changed from that into an earthed harmonic energy, but how now there's a new thing called there might be some withholds because Mars is still here, right? Mars is still in Gemini. So there's still some fire. There's still some anger and this really logical brain about right and wrong, left and right. This is like this, and this is like this. And it's like this because this is what I've been thinking all this time. And so it's fitting into my confirmation bias. There's less flexibility available when either Mercury's in Aries or Mars is in Gemini, but together that alignment where they were both there increased the intelligence on both parts. So now we have Venus, the ruler, joined this as well. And while Venus is in her, one of her best placements she can be in her own sign, where we do have that capacity to really harmonize our relationships and to have our relationships come back to the pleasure, right? Come back to the connection, come back to the physical connection. That's one of the biggest parts, especially in romantic relationships, that gets, when there's fights or when there's anger or discord, we withhold our physical affections. And that puts even more detriment or, wreaks more havoc on the relationship itself, because that physical connectivity reminds us of our love. And it reminds us that we are one, and that whatever ideas we have in our head, or however we are good or not good at communicating those ideas in our head, that there's still this humanity, this physical humanity. Like I was saying, when we see people face to face, we remember their humanness. Well, when we're in love with someone, or even just in deep friendship with someone, hugging, holding hands, being affectionate, and making love are very much parts of remembering the connectivity and remembering the harmony and bringing us back into harmony with one another, where whatever it was that brought us into discord can come back. And we're more concerned with, yes, I want to make sure I have my food today. And I also want to make sure there's enough for this other person that they can, and I would almost rather them sit with me than me be alone enjoying this huge meal. So this quality of Venus being here brings a lot of peace and love into our relationships. But having the ruler of the house there with Mercury doesn't actually help Mercury as much as we might think. It actually sort of diminishes what Mercury is doing, because the ruler's there, because relationships are there. And like I said, that can bring up the physical quality of connectivity. The intellectual communication part actually takes a little bit of a hit, because it's like, okay, well, the owner of the house is here. So even the best tenant is not the owner, right? Even a really good tenant or a friend is not the same as the owner. They have to take a back seat while the owner of the house sort of rules the roost. So this is going to increase the quality of withholding information. I want to feel connection. I want to feel connected to you. If I'm in a romantic relationship, I want to touch you and I want to feel that sensuality between us. And maybe I'm not going to say the things that I think are going to actually create discord, but that's hiding something, right? That's creating a situation where we aren't being totally honest, or we're not able to really feel vulnerable and capable of sharing our full truth. So it's these little details and nuance that's kind of important to understand. And we see again that Mercury is the one who's going to hit Rahu first. So then when Venus hits Rahu, that will be what expands. The love, the physicality, the romance, and all of that will be the sort of delusional thing that we're really focusing on more than anything, is how can we, how much romance and love we feel, or if we don't feel that at all, it'll become like, look how much there is outside of me, look how in love everyone else is and I'm not. But that magnification that Rahu brings to the table is important to understand with both of the signs, because even though Rahu's been in Taurus since September of 2020, the planets, as they move through it, really experience that magnification, that dispersion of energy. And that dispersion is another thing. When Venus hits Rahu, it can take away some of the kind of committed energy, or some of the energy of two people relating, and become more of this sort of polyamorous, like I see love everywhere kind of thing, you know, where, oh, I want to feel this with so many different types of people. It can really bring in a lot of illusion and, again, dispersion of energy. And then, of course, on the 14th, we'll see the sun move in to into Taurus also. So we'll, you know, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in another video because we have Akshaya Tritiya coming up. It's sort of officially on the 14th in India, but the 12th and the 13th will be the days that the moon is actually in Taurus, at least in Hawaii and you know, the US. So that I'll be discussing a little bit more in depth, where we have the moon and the sun. I can show on the 12th, we have the moon here in Taurus, and on the 13th also. And it's right after the new moon in sidereal Aries, which, just like all the other new moons recently, has been happening at the very end of the sign, very end of the time that sun has been here. It sets off Akshaya Tritiya because the sun is exalted in Aries, and the moon is going to be in its exalted point in Taurus just a few days later. But you can see this particular Akshaya Tritiya, we're going to be having a lot of planets there. It won't just be the moon, and Venus will be in her own sign. The moon will be exalted, and Mercury is in positive dignity, is in good dignity here. So there's a lot of blessings that flow at this time. And it's called Akshaya Tritiya because the Tritiya is actually the phase. So it's the TT of the moon, where we get to the third phase after the new moon in Aries is the moon being in Taurus. But if you think about the fact that this new moon is with the sun at, you know, 29 degrees, as opposed to, well, actually, is it at 29 degrees there? Yeah, well, not quite at 29 degrees. It'll be, you know, it'll happen a little bit before that. Then the 3 days later, the moon is actually almost out of Taurus, and it will be out of Taurus. Like in Hawaii time, it won't even be in Taurus, except for the very, very early hours of the 14th. So that official day of Akshaya Tritiya is really referring more to that third TT and to the fact that, you know, it's in India that it's celebrated. But if you look at other time zones and the actual degrees of the moon and where it's at, it's kind of going to be more like the 12th and the 13th that we're going to have that exalted energy of the sun and the moon, which is the point of Akshaya Tritiya, is that we have these exalted planets, these exalted luminaries, really, our soul power, the sun and the moon, our inner emotional strength, and that we're able to access this power and intelligence that comes when we have these planets in their highest state of exaltation. So I will do another video on Akshaya Tritiya a little bit closer to it, so that we can access that energy and really use the intelligence in the best possible way. But for right now, I just wanted to talk about Venus and Mercury and how they are operating here in Taurus, and what a difference it makes in terms of our communication and our connection and our relationships. And it makes a big difference in how we are experiencing one another. And maybe you'll notice it in your life and in your day and even online, how much quicker you are to sort of sacrifice that strong opinion you had to keep the peace, and how much more focused you are on creating harmony and peace in your relationships, which overall is a good thing, right? Overall, that's a blessing. But of course, in deep intimacy, either with a romantic partner or with a friend, or even a business partner, we do need honesty. You know, we do need that quality of honesty. We don't need it to be angry like Mars in Gemini. We don't want to be angry about our information. But we do want to be honest, and that honesty might be a little bit affected by having Venus there joined with Mercury, and definitely by having the North Node there. Rahu is not known for honesty. Rahu is actually where we exaggerate and even lie. It's where we have such a delusional view of things that we are almost incapable of that straight, honest truth, because we're seeing things in this shadowy way, without a lot of intelligence around it, without a lot that is giving us the capacity to know from wisdom, from past truths. So that, and it's also an anxious energy, right? Rahu has this anxiety about it, where that air quality and the quality of magnification makes everything seem kind of like, what's what. So the capacity to really communicate in that natural Taurian way, that really grounded, effective communication that can be very honest, even while keeping the peace, is a little bit compromised here. So I hope this is helpful. You can like, share, comment. If you're not yet on my email list, go ahead and sign up, www.radhahomeyoga.com. Then you can get that report and really see where Rahu and Ketu are in your chart right now in this cycle, especially as we're almost into the next eclipse phase. At the end of May, we're going to have some eclipses that are going to be really activating this axis. And also, when you sign up, you get a report on Jupiter being in Aquarius for your sign as it moved in April. So hope to see you again soon. Namaste.